Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Mental Toughness and Body Show. On this show, we're going to talk about the psychology of self-doubt in high achievers. Really exciting and interesting topic. And strategies for recognizing and overcoming it. So our guest today is going to blow you away with her insights into how to combat self-doubt and bridge the confidence gap necessary for success in both our personal and professional lives. Now, obviously on this podcast, we've interviewed people from all walks of life, from your A-list celebrities, Olympic gold medalists, and billion-dollar empire builders. And today we have brilliant coach and life strategist, Rachel Lounds. Rachel, thank you for joining us.
Hello, Rob. Thanks for having me.
So, Rachel, tell us a little bit, first of all, why does this topic specifically interest you?
Well, I was in advertising for 25 years, and during that time, I never really went past the middle management stage. And that's purely because I really just doubted my abilities. I doubted my skills, my knowledge, my competency. And so to kind of stay in my career and try and be successful, I would hold myself back from taking opportunities or leadership roles. I didn't want to expose myself. I was afraid that people would find out that I didn't know what I was doing. And so I hid under the radar, if you like,
Yes.
and did everything I could to protect myself from being exposed as this kind of fake and fraud and phony. And then, eventually I left my advertising career and realized that the whole reason I never got ahead, because I was very frustrated in my career. It's like, why can't I get ahead? Why won't I get these opportunities? They were right there in front of me. The reason I didn't take them was because of me and my own kind of
Yes.
lack of self-belief, lack of confidence. And so when I left and decided to, work as a coach, become a coach, I saw myself for who I really was that someone who was hiding behind this self-doubt and lack of self-belief. And I had to really challenge that. And then I noticed that it's pervasive. It's everywhere. It's particularly in the advertising industry that I spent so long in. And that's why I, went and kind of got deep into the subject and decided to focus on that and help other people with that too.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. I started my career as an accountant and became a chartered accountant, and I worked with big corporate brands. And I got to the stage towards the end of my career before I started running my own business. I had acted as a general manager
Right.
was at RACV here in Victoria, and I did that for I think it was about 8 weeks, something like that. And then the executive general manager, who all the general managers reported to, approached me about putting my hat in the ring for another general manager role. And I said to him, I'm not good enough for that.
All right.
And it was interesting because here's an EGM that thought that I had all the skills in the world to do this. And I had acted as a general manager. But when you're in an acting role, it's different to all the responsibilities that come with being, the full-time general manager.
Testing it out a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just had all this self-doubt that I thought I looked at other general managers and I thought, well, I'm not as smart as this person, I'm not this, I'm not that, et cetera, et cetera. Now, interestingly, now, if I was in that role now, I would say no problem.
Yeah, right.
Because also the amount of personal growth that I've had through all the work that I've done through running my own business and the coaching that I've had to help improve me would absolutely put me so much better than so many of these clown general managers that I was looking at the time. But back then I was like, I just don't believe that I could be as good as that person. And just like you were saying, I feel like I would be found out to be a fraud and be no good. And almost going back to the like primary school and high school in those early years where I was bullied and that kind of stuff and feeling like that person that was just inadequate.
Yeah, totally. it's called the spotlight effect. So you're thrown into the spotlight and you can't handle the lights being on you. And everything that you kind of feel like you can't do is going to come out, and you've got this feeling that everyone's looking at you going, okay, go. you know and uh, it's scary, it's terrifying, because all your fears are going to come to light. And I totally get what you're saying there. Like, acting like the general manager at that point was obviously a great thing for you to do, but then when someone said, why don't you go for it, you're like, wait, no way. No, no, no,
Mm.
I can't do that. And everything that you kind of, all your fears are coming to the surface. I mean, I got offered, I was in a big ad agency, and I was 2IC technically. I didn't label myself that. Someone else labeled me that, because I had a boss manager. She was amazing, and she saw in me everything that she had in her, and all the skills and everything that would needed to go into that head of department role. And when she left, she said, I'm going to put you forward. And I just went, no way. And she's like, why? And I said, I can't handle it. I can't handle the pressure of having to take control of this department, and have meetings with the CEO and the managing director and the COO and CFO, and have to know the numbers and all that kind
Yes.
of thing. I just wasn't confident in the maths part of it, because I'm not very good at maths, to be honest. And I saw leadership as this kind of, this title that I didn't deserve to have. I wasn't good enough to be a leader, and it was this almost enigma type of thing, where to be a leader you had to have this and this. I mean, I've since completely changed my perspective on leadership through where you mentioned there, the self-development, the coaching, all that kind of, having your own business, completely switched that around. But yeah, I did not take that opportunity. I said no. They got someone else in, and then I got made redundant.
So do you think that like we're really interesting as humans. I think we're born really weak, and then we have to learn all the other things to become great in our life and to be successful. So do you think on some level we all are born with this like self-doubt, and we then have to go through life to yeah, learn how to become more resilient, mentally tough, if you like, to know how to, break free of that so that you don't have the self-doubt and you're prepared to, step outside your comfort zone and really go for things?
No, I don't. I think children are very free and like playful, imaginative, all that kind of thing. And I think we know from research that belief systems are created between the ages of 0 to 7, because children don't have consciousness. They are literally just free and open, and so our minds are completely open, and then it's filled with beliefs and values and systems that are given to us by our caregivers, right? So that's where we formulate all of our beliefs, and up until that point we don't have the ability to reason or question what they are, and so they become our reality and our story. And so self-doubts around our ability are embedded into our subconscious at that age, and that's where we're told, oh, you can't do that, or you're not capable of this, or you're not quite as good as X or your sister, or whatever, at that game or that sport, or speaking, or whatever it is. And then that becomes your reality, that becomes your narrative and your story, which you then take into adulthood, and you pick up more of those self-doubts along the way, because you have more stories that reinforce that original belief.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
bullying kind of adds into that, yeah.
Yeah, so where, going back to your story, so where did that come from for you?
Well, so I have parents who are teachers. They were teachers, and very strict. I think also in the generation that they're in, they're baby boomers. And so there was that kind of, children should be seen and not heard kind of thing. So
Mm.
I was a very free spirited, daydreamy type of child. I still am a little bit like that, quite creative. That was not really encouraged. My father was very much like, you must do this and you must do that. He was very controlling. He was also quite violent, and, as I say, very strict. So there was a lot of parameters that I had to live under. And creative expression wasn't really encouraged in me. So I was kind of told quite a lot. The message I got was, well, you're average, you know, you should just try and do your best. We're not going to go very, very far in your life. Like, I was actively told to find a rich man to marry because I probably wasn't going to do very well in life.
Oh, yay.
Yay, find a rich man. Like, that should be my life.
Oh my goodness.
Which of course I did not.
Well, good on you.
Thank you.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, so thinking about I'm thinking out loud now.
yeah.
If I think about, so where did that come from me? I mean, my dad wasn't really an awesome role model, I suppose. Again, my parents were born in the 40s, so around that same sort of time, I suppose, the baby boomers and stuff. And
Yeah,
uh, the male had a certain role and the female had a certain role. Certainly in my household, dad went to work, mum had to stay at home, and dad was kind of a bit absent, I suppose. So, and it was kind of an era where, yeah, like you said, the kids were like to be seen, not heard, or hang on, heard, not seen, whatever.
seen and not heard. Yeah.
And so you had to do everything yourself in terms of like I had to, like I usually played by myself. My brother was older and he was off doing his thing.
Mm,
There wasn't really a lot of interaction with the parents, like schoolwork. I had to do it. I can maybe remember once or twice. Mum helped me with some homework, but otherwise you had to do it all yourself.
yeah.
And because she didn't work and I didn't see dad as working hard, perhaps that self-doubt, came through there. And then with the build, I'm a shorter guy, so I was a shorter child, and I was an easy target for bullies and stuff. And I suppose I wasn't a great student as well. So you're putting effort in, you're not getting great rewards, so you're constantly getting
Yeah.
this sense of, yeah, you're average or a little bit below average, perhaps. And
Mm,
so, yeah, maybe I just created all this story. Well, I did. I created a very specific narrative in my mind about what I wasn't going to be in
yeah.
life. I wasn't going to be successful, and I was just going to be an average sort of person. And
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone's got a specific kind of self-doubt story. I suppose there's root causes to why we experience, and that's kind of what we're talking about here, often built in childhood, but we pick up more reinforcing parts of that. My kind of self-doubt story or narrative is that I don't have anything of interest to say. And that comes from the being seen and not heard.
right.
I never got any what we, like traditional kind of love, I suppose. Like, my parents never hugged me or kissed me. Like, my mum actually said to me recently, "I'm sorry, I never did that." And I
I'm
thought I'd
sending
made.
I'm sending you a virtual hug.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually said to her, "Mum, I thought I'd made that up in my mind, and now you're telling me it's actually true." Like, first of all, the validation was great, but also how sad that you didn't hug
Yeah.
your own child. And then when I was 11 years old, my brother had a very serious car accident, and he's paralyzed and brain damaged and now lives in a home, and he doesn't have a very great life. And he was 15 when that happened. And that was drink driving, by the way. So don't ever drink and drive. And it was devastating for our family.
Mm.
And at that point, I became even more obsolete in the family because everything was
All
about
the
Jason.
attention went elsewhere.
Everything was about Jason. And yeah, like, even to the point where anything that I had that might have been like a normal kind of experience for an early teen, and then into my teens, where I would express a feeling, or I don't feel well, or I'm struggling with this. It was never as bad as what Jason was going through. And so I shut down
Yes.
at the time.
Mm.
And so anything I had to say was of no interest. So that's the story of I have nothing to say, or I don't deserve to be heard. It's probably
Yes.
more like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that if we talk about yeah, how we've I guess, been molded by our environment and everything as
Mm.
children. I mean, if we fast forward even to now, I see a lot of uh, adults that are on social media, and they're
Mhm.
presenting an inauthentic, better version of them,
Yeah.
filtered version of themselves, filtered in words, filtered in whatever you want to do with your face and so forth. So it's not something that, I mean, maybe social media has made it worse and easier for people to do that.
Mhm.
But what, because obviously you're not in that space now, because if you had nothing to say, I'd be interviewing a blank wall right now. So I'm obviously wanting to know about your story and your reason for success. So what, well, perhaps how have you now created this amazing version of you to help others in this space, and how do we help our audience that are suffering from this? Because we all have insecurities. So
Yeah. I mean, it was very challenging for me to start a business. Like I'm quite an enthusiastic, ambitious person. Like I have on the one hand, and this is the thing about self-doubt and confidence. It's not that we are not confident all the time, or we are confident all the time. It doesn't work like that. It's not a dichotomy like that where you see confident people and they're like, oh, they must be confident all the time. Everybody has self-doubt and fears, right? It's normal to doubt ourselves, but having self-doubt and fear doesn't mean that we are incompetent at something. We have to understand that we have dips in confidence. So starting a business was brave and courageous. And I was like, yeah, I could do this. And I literally had no idea what I was doing when I started the coaching business. I since realized, like in the last, few years, I would say the first 3 years of starting this business was me trying to figure out what on earth I am doing, or even how do I do this? And I had to go through a lot of um, dark moments where I had to face myself and those doubts and what they meant and that story. So it's really important, I think, for anyone who experiences self-doubt to, instead of like trying to fake your way through and kind of ignore it, you do have to turn around and face it. And that's where working with a coach helps, because they hold up a mirror to you and say,
yeah,
they call you out on your bullshit basically and say,
yeah.
you're standing in your own way and you've got to sort that out. And so I really had to do that. I really had to face those fears and work through my own self-doubts and really understand, like, for me, obviously it manifested in what is traditionally known as imposter syndrome, or has been talked about as imposter syndrome, where even though I've had a lot of success in various parts of my life, I've never recognized that as being success or anything great or an accomplishment of any kind. But yeah, I mean, now I call myself out on my stuff. I'm aware of it, and I think that's a really key part, is to be aware of where you're holding yourself back. What are those beliefs, and trying to reframe those beliefs into new perspectives. So understanding the thought process you're having, the inner thought. What is that? Where does that come from? Who does that belong to? Is that mine? Do I need to hold on to it and let it have so much power over me? The answer is always no, I don't. And how can I reframe that into something that's more self-affirming, more positive, and easier? And like, for people who, like, for example, for people who kind of have perfectionist kind of tendencies, where they'll keep going and keep going and keep going on something and it's never good enough and I always could have done better. A self-affirming reframing kind of thought on that is, well, it's good enough, or it doesn't have to be perfect, but I do have to get it going. Or and this one's very helpful, actually. The first time I do something, it's never going to be as good as the second and the third. That's something I really held on to, where I was like, yeah, the more I do something, the better I'm going to get. And that's how confidence is built. And that's how you kind of move past that self-doubt and fears about your own ability to do things. So
How
when
much, oh, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
how much is external validation? What's the importance of that? It's kind of a two-pronged
Mm,
question, because you can then have just yes people around you, or
hmm
people that say, "Oh, Rachel, you're awesome. You're doing so well. You're doing so great," which is normally what the role of family does, but not in every case.
Yeah.
Uh, um, but that doesn't necessarily help you. But does that help at all in terms of the self-doubt, or is it really just artificial and it's not really helping that inner voice?
I think it depends on who you're talking to, because you can have a set of cheerleaders who are like, yeah, you're doing great, blah, blah, but it's, quite often that's just not enough for you to overcome that self-doubt, because you're just getting a moment of validation, but it doesn't get to the core of why you're not feeling, confident in the first place. And so
Yes.
that's kind of where you do need to get to the root cause of the belief in the, and then subconsciously reprogram it through, like auto suggestion, repeating like behaviors that are more self-affirming. And that's where working with like maybe getting a mentor or a coach who can actually kindly call you out on on when you kind of going back into those old behaviors and thought patterns and actually standing in your own way, not actually moving ahead. So yes, on the one hand, it's great to have family members who support you, but if they're just supporting you in everything you do, and even when you're kind of maybe not quite moving ahead or owning your own doubt at that moment, then it's not really helpful. It's just a moment of validation that is like, yeah, nice. You still then walk away, go to sleep and go, I'm still doubting myself,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think about like where I was as a teenager to young adult,
Mm,
studying to become a chartered accountant, to go through corporate and so forth. What I spoke about before as being like insecure, uncertain about myself, as going into a general manager type role, but always looking for, you kind of always wanting to step up that corporate ladder for whatever reason. I'm a high achiever. I want to do better.
mm,
And even when I started my business, I'm like, I've never run a business before. I don't know anything about sales. I'm very left brain. I'm an accountant, logic, numbers, all that kind of stuff. I don't know how to do this other stuff. But I had this belief at that point. So I was 42 when I decided to do that. Um, I had this belief that no matter how hard it was, I backed myself to
mm,
do it. And I guess I had the confidence at that point in my life to say, I can do this. But then
mm,
along the road, it's like, well, I don't know that I can go to that level, or I don't know that I can do that. And that's only come through, yeah, looking in the mirror a lot myself, and getting various coaches to help me. And only some coaches could take me so far. It's like, well, I
yeah,
need to go to a different coach now to take me to that next level and that next level. And I think it's really only come through uh, the results that you get from the actions that you take, and working with a coach like you that knows that's got a proven track record of giving you the results over and over again, way more successful than you. And that person can pretty much guide you through anything that you're going to go through to get to that next level. And I think personally, uh, that's the only way that I've done it.
yeah,
To like getting the results, doing the hard work, doing it consistently, working 7 days a week, working harder, longer than I've ever thought I needed to work in my business
yeah.
at all. And that, I mean, there's probably still a little bit of self-doubt from time to time, but it doesn't really exist in my DNA anymore.
Mm. Well, I think it's important to understand that everyone experiences, failure, mistakes, setbacks, adversity along the way. And it's really how you handle them that matters. Like the late, great
Correct.
Nelson Mandela said, I never lose, I either win or I learn. And that's the important thing to understand, that on our journey, we don't, we don't have to give up just because we failed at something or something didn't go right. I like to call it course correction, because success isn't linear. Success is like a pendulum. You go up and down, you meet different corners on the way, you pivot, you turn, you have to make decisions. And so everybody's success journey has that. And so, like, preventing yourself from taking action because it didn't work out the first time, well, that's just quitting. That's got nothing to do with success. And so you have to understand that, building confidence in something, you don't wake up confident. You have to push yourself to
Build it.
get there.
Mm.
And it requires work, determination, resilience, grit. And for me, the one thing that I really had to embrace in order for me to push myself out of this kind of comfort zone that I was in, where I was literally terrified all the time, was that I had to embrace bravery. I had to have a brave mind about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, what's the opposite of fear? Well, it's being brave, isn't it? It's being brave and
Yeah.
courageous. And so we must have, and so I think being brave is something that people can actually understand, number one, and attach themselves to and go, yeah, I can be brave. I can do that. I can be brave about this. And so it's something I encourage a lot of my clients to do, is to embrace that sense of bravery when things get hard, when it is a little bit like, oh my gosh, what am I doing on the precipice of something difficult and new? And once you kind of attach a bit of bravery to yourself, you realize it's never that hard and there's always an answer. There's always a way out. So, you know, work with people who can help you, as you say, that like what you're talking about there with different coaches. And you do have to kind of pivot all the time on the journey of success, especially in the business, right?
Yes. How important would you say relationships are in this journey? And like your inner circle, like I have only like two or three people on my inner circle. How important is that in you building um, your your self-confidence and removing self-doubt?
I think it's extremely important. You know, you need to surround yourself with people who are not just, I mean, not just validating and supporting you, but also like challenging you a little bit as well, you know,
Mm.
and the kind of people who are going to talk about you in a great way when you're not in the room, you know, and kind of give you the support that you need to get ahead, because there's definitely a bunch of naysayers out there and people who are going to criticize you, and that is definitely going to happen. You are always going to get people who are criticizing you. You got to remember that when people do that, that's more about them than it is about you.
Yeah, their self-doubt.
Their own self-doubt is playing out in a story there where it's like, well, I would never do that, so look at you, you know. And it's, you don't need to listen to that. You need to listen to the people who are there to support you, and that means they do call you out on your
Yes.
bullshit. And I mean, I've got really solid friends who do question some of the things I do, and I'm so happy that they do that, because when they do, I kind of reflect and go, yeah, there's something in that. And you need people like that. You need people to kind of give you a little bit of like a moment of reflection. I think
So
that's,
as adults, like it can be hard to form new friendships
yeah.
and relationships and so forth. So what are some strategies perhaps around how people do that? Because a lot of people have toxic relationships around them and just tolerate them because they are family or whatever.
Mhm.
What's your approach or the tips for how do people create these
I
awesome
think you've got to be
friendships?
really clear on your boundaries. And that's something I never really knew about as a child, because there were no boundaries, you know, like in my life. I didn't even know what boundaries were until I probably in my mid-30s, which is interesting. You got to be clear about on what you will and won't accept. And a lot of that comes down to the values that you have. Again, something else that I didn't know. People don't always know what their values are. They haven't sat down and thought about what their values are. So it's
So
important.
maybe give us some example if you're happy to share. What would be let's just say that you're doing an assessment right now out loud that, oh, do I want Rob Evans in my inner circle? What would be those questions that you would ask yourself?
I'd have to spend a bit of time with you, like in a room, I think. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm very much like an energy vibe type person. And I don't let people into my inner circle like image. I'm very friendly. I'm a very friendly person. I like to get to know people.
So you
And
said energy there. So tell us a bit
yeah,
about that, because that's important for me too.
yeah, I think, well, you know, a lot of people talk about vibe, right? I just didn't vibe them. And that's because their energy didn't match your energy. And for me, it's like I can pick up on when I think people might be lying, or when there's, you know, something not quite honest about them. And I don't know, I don't even know how to describe that in words. It's just a feeling.
Yes.
But I like to assess. So I do sit back and assess people a little bit. I'm not one to jump straight into like deep, meaningful relationships with people. I can be very surface level at the start, and then it's when people are talking about authentic thing, when they're a bit vulnerable. I think when people are like open themselves up to vulnerability, then I can see who they are as a person. And for me, that's important because we're all vulnerable. We all have things that are painful inside of us. And when you can share that, that's where you get a deeper connection. What I've discovered as something as a bit of a superpower for myself. So I recently did this speakers boot camp, and when I feel I was a bit overwhelmed after the first day. I was really overwhelmed. Like I went home and cried, and I had to like really have a talk to myself about what was going on. And it was that whole I don't know what to say piece. And then the next day I went in and I told people, I said, yeah, I was really overwhelmed and I cried, and it was really, and I shared it. And then the following day, so I had like 3 or 4 people come up and whisper in my ear, yeah, when you said that, well, I felt that too. And I think you create connection through being honest, authentic, and vulnerable at times. And that's where you know that you can trust someone, because bringing someone into your world requires trust.
Yeah.
And you're only going to find that out if someone kind of peels back the onion a little bit and says, here's a bit of the real me. What
Yes.
do you think? You know?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Nice. Well, you've given me the right brain answer. I'll give you my left brain answer.
Right, go for
Probably 10 years. I need to
it.
know somebody for about 10 years to be in my inner circle.
Okay, 10
Which
years.
if you like, if
Do
you
we
think
have time, Rob? I don't know.
I know if you think about like I said, I've got like 2 or 3 people in my inner circle.
Yeah.
If you think about those people that are nearest and dearest to you that you would like, you give them your bank account details or PIN codes or whatever, you would absolutely trust them, and you just know
Mhm.
that they would always do the right thing by you. If you have any of those people, for me, that those people are 10 years or more in my life.
Yeah.
Because people that have been less than that, I've had people, be disloyal, that are, betray you for whatever reason, or just they move in and out of your circle. And yeah, being very closely aligned with like my values and beliefs as well. Somebody that
Mm.
doesn't, um, well, for instance, if somebody, takes drugs, or they're heavy gamblers, or doing illegal activities or things like that, it's like, sorry, I'm not going to have
Yeah.
anything to do with that. Or if
Mm.
somebody that doesn't treat other people really well, I think that's really interesting when you're with somebody and you see how people treat other people.
Yeah.
Like if they're talking down to people or whatever, then that's like, nah, you're not my sort of person.
Mm.
So yeah, there you go. I
Yeah.
have a 10-point checklist that I go through.
Do you? Right. Well, it does come down to values, I suppose. And as you say, like the values when people treat other people, like one of my values is kindness,
Yeah.
like compassion and kindness. And so when I see people who aren't being compassionate or kind, I think, well, maybe we're not, maybe we shouldn't be friends. And it
Yes.
really does. I mean, you don't have to have the same values of me, but as me, but I need to be able to see that there is a connection to my values.
Yes.
And obviously integrity is a big one for a lot of people. And I would say most people, when you ask them about their values, they would probably pick integrity as like one of them. And that's because we want to see that people follow through with what they say they're going to do, right?
Yes.
We
Yes.
want to see that builds trust.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
And
But there's 2 things, aren't there? Because there is like, yes, I'm going to do that, Rachel. Yes, I will do that. I will do that. I will do that. But then you only really see that and gain that trust is when it's actually done.
yeah,
Because it's like, oh, sorry, I was busy. I forgot to do that. Oh, sorry, I'll get that done for you. And then you just keep on forgetting because it's not a priority. It's like, well, sorry,
no,
you got to do what you say.
I'm a fiercely loyal person. So if you are in my inner circle, I'm a protector. So if
Yeah.
you're in my inner circle, right? If someone did something to you, like say you're in my inner circle, Rob, and someone did something to you, and you're in Melbourne, I would fly to Melbourne and find out who that person is and go and have a word with them. Like that's the kind of person I
You
am.
can just use Zoom these days. You can save yourself the flight. But I
Who
appreciate the
are
dedication.
they?
And so, obviously, a big part of on this show, I like to ask my guests around, health and wellness and so
Yes.
forth, because
Mm.
it's so near and dear to me and changed my whole life to do what I do now. So, in relation to today's topic, for instance, in terms of self-confidence and self-doubt, what role do you think that someone's health, and that could be mental health, it could be physical health and so forth, but what role or how important do you think health is in that?
Oh, I think it's very important, very, very important. Like, for example, I've always done a lot of exercise. So I find walking helps me clear my head, for example, gives me like, I think self-regulation when it comes to confidence and those lack of confident moments is like, you need to take a moment to reflect and regulate your emotions. The best way to do that is breathing, right? Number one. And for me, it's getting out and walking or going for a swim or whatever that is, because you need to change states when you're having these self-doubt moments. We can let them like spiral. Our negative thoughts can spiral way out of control. And the best way to control that is to balance yourself from a mental well-being perspective. Now, whatever that looks like for you, some people like yoga. I do a lot of Pilates. I play tennis. I walk. I think health for me is very, very important. And you need to look after this. Number one, you've got
Yeah.
to look after your brain. And so I don't drink. I don't really drink. I might have a couple of drinks every now and then. But, alcohol creates anxiety in you. It does nothing for you, really. And even to the food that you eat, that's really super important as well. Like too much sugar, not good for you, not good for your body, not good for your brain. Too much coffee, too much anything, really. So like balance is super important, because when you're balanced, like physically, you can be balanced emotionally, and then you can start being aware of, why am I not feeling confident right now? What's the story that's going on? What can I do to help myself? Kind of follow that.
Yeah, yeah, nicely said. Interestingly, what started me on the journey that I'm on now, 1988, somebody threatened to kill me and
What?
held me up against the wall,
Who are they? I know we're
threatened
not
to,
10 years into our
threatened to,
friendship. Yeah.
threatened to, I don't even know if they'd still be alive now. They were not mentally well, um, and threatened to kill me. And I was 21
Oh,
or
wow.
20, right? And it happened in a classroom at uni, in a crowded classroom, and the teacher was watching as well. Ironically, it was a behavioral science class,
Oh,
and
wow.
no one intervened, right? And I was
Was it
looking,
an experiment, Rob?
I was looking for someone to step in and rescue me, right?
Yeah.
And no
Yeah.
one said anything, no one did anything.
Really?
And I felt so humiliated
Yeah.
that I didn't have the courage to stand up for myself.
Right.
And it's funny how things happen in life, right? It was probably the greatest gift that I've ever been given.
Mm.
And I think in the following few days, I was reading a local newspaper, and there was an article in there about a gym. And this particular guy put on 10 kilos in 10 weeks of, I wouldn't have been all muscle, but, um,
Mm.
10 kilos of strength. And I thought, that's going to be me. I went out to the gym. I joined the gym. I jumped on the scales, and I was wearing jeans and fully clothed, and I weighed 50 kilos.
What? Oh, Rob.
And he
Because
said,
you're
boy,
bigger.
now, so
Yeah.
the guy that was weighing me was a professional bodybuilder and powerlifter. He was probably weighed over 100 kilos. I'd never seen a man mountain like this ever before in my life. And he said, boy, there's not much of you, is there? So I was probably about 48 kilos.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I told him what I wanted to do. He set me up with the food and everything. And I put on 10 kilos in 10 weeks. I grew out of everything, including my undies. And I was just determined.
Tidy
And
whitey's got a new meaning.
that's right. It was interesting because I started that because I felt like if I got bigger, I wasn't going to get any taller, but if
Mm.
I could get bigger, I would be more confident.
Yeah. Yeah.
It probably wasn't for a decade later that I realized it had absolutely zero to do with the physical part of me. And it was
Mm.
all to do with what I thought about myself
Yeah.
and process
Belief.
that.
The beliefs.
And that was kind of like, oh, wow, okay, I get it now. But
Yeah.
I needed to go on that journey for me to change me physically so that I could connect with the why it was so important to me. So I mean, my strength training is just something that I've done every
Mm.
week since then.
Yeah.
and why the health part of me, just exactly what you said there, is it helps make me a better person as a result of it. But it's helped me just overcome so much self-doubt and belief. And you realize that well, rather than working up the corporate ladder now, you're just kind of moving up the human ladder and realizing that the tip of the arrow of that top 1% of success in health or wealth or success in what it is that you're doing, there's very few people up there.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is what most people should be doing but aren't doing.
Yeah. It's
So,
interesting, that story you shared there. Because kind of at the core of why we have these lack of confidence moments and self-doubts is quite often a moment of shame. So
yeah.
you experienced, like, shame is always at the core of it, really. Like, in that moment, you
Mm.
were,
I was embarrassed.
yeah, you were. And so your response to that was, I need to be bigger so that
Mm.
I can protect myself.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of the inner subconscious kind of part of you that said, I must be bigger so that I can protect myself and never feel like that again.
Yes. Because my dialogue up to that point was I was small. That this is the stupid thing that maybe there's some science to it, but this is what I used to think.
Oh,
Because I was the smallest kid in the school I was even shorter than all the year sevens when I was in year 10. And
oh,
then the one person, it was a young girl, she came to the school and I was slightly taller than her. And I was like an average student or a little bit below.
right.
And I made up this story for myself that because I'm smaller, my
Mhm.
brain is smaller than everybody else's.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
that's why I'm not as smart as everybody else. And
Yeah.
everybody else is just better than me because they were better at sports. And I couldn't play any of the like AFL footy and stuff. I would have been absolutely poleaxed because I was like, people were like, 50, 60 centimeters taller than that. That's just height. Never mind the size.
Yeah.
I'm like this little kid. I was like 8 years old. So,
Yeah. Right.
that's how I looked. So I just made up this story about how inadequate I was, and I just told that to me for probably over a decade or more, that I was just an inadequate human being.
That is so fascinating, Rob, that you as a child created this story about your ability, your mental ability, your knowledge, and that kind of thing, because your physical
Yeah,
presence wasn't big. Therefore, my brain presence cannot be big. And
yeah,
you've attached and created that story, which then dominated you for, a long time, I imagine.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like my self-confidence, everything. Like asking like girls out and stuff. I didn't have my first girlfriend until I was 23
right.
because every single person I asked said no.
Oh, yeah, that's
So
gonna knock your confidence, isn't it? Yeah.
So my self-confidence was non-existent. I thought, well, and again, I thought, well, I had this picture of, or was in my mind about I'm ugly, no
Right,
one
yeah.
likes me, and I'm too short.
Yeah, yeah. And
Uh,
that, and when you think that internally, that's what your external energy field then puts out,
yeah, that's right.
like your thoughts. Our thoughts are very powerful, which is why we do need to change the conversation that we're having with ourselves,
Yes,
because the conversation that we have with ourselves, kind of then makes the belief system that we have a reality in our external world. Whereas if we change what we're saying to ourselves and we back ourselves a bit, we start to believe in ourselves, we trust ourselves, we build some bravery and courage, and we start to take more risks, then things change way quicker than we ever thought they could. And
yes.
that's the wonderful thing about coaching, right? Is that
Yeah,
we get that.
absolutely. I mean,
Mm.
the good news story about, because that sounds a little bit heartbreaking, all of
Yeah.
that story. I spent probably 3 years. This was when I started business. 3 years, every single day. I mean, 7 days a week. I worked on myself. I thought I'm going to change my mindset around who I believe I am and what it is that I can do. So again, I guess there are traces of what I just said that carried forward to me up until when I was 40.
Mm.
Like still the self-belief. It's like, oh, you can only achieve this level of success.
Yeah.
And so I completely changed that. And now I'm happy to say it is actually impossible for me to think negatively about anything.
Yeah.
It's just impossible because of the way that I've recoded my thinking. And
Hmm.
it's like any problem is just a possible opportunity and,
Yeah.
learning for me and stuff. So you can
Yeah.
put away the tissues, everybody. It's okay. There's a good news story at the end of it.
Yeah.
Rachel, I feel like we could be keeping on talking for quite some time
I
here.
know I've got way more things to say.
Maybe we'll have to have you on again another point. I want to ask you, well, two more questions. The first one is, what's the greatest piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, okay. So there's actually two, but I'll go with the last one because the first one was probably a bit obvious, which is, you know, always be nice to people because you never know where you're going to see them again. And I got that piece of advice when I was a receptionist in my first advertising agency. But the one that's probably the most profound and probably the most life-changing, I think, career-changing, was that I was working in that agency. This was the same place where I did not take that opportunity for the leadership
Yep.
role. And I think just before I got made redundant, my COO said to me, you know, Rachel, you're very, very good at what you do. You're an exceptional performer. And because I used to work on projects and I'd be like producer, project manager, manage all the resources, the timelines and the budgets and the scheduling and everything. And he said, but you're always like this far ahead on everyone else on what's going on, what could go on, because you have to be risk averse when you have that kind of job. So, but you expect other people to be there too. And actually, what you need to do is take them on the journey because not everyone thinks the same way that you do. And I was like, wait, what? People don't think the same way that I do. So, and that was that massive realization of, oh, right. People don't think the same way that I do.
Yes.
It was real. I know it sounds super obvious, but it was a real game changer for me where it's like, oh, right, okay. So when I'm talking, they don't exactly get it because I'm like 20 steps ahead. And
Mm.
so I need to slow down and just make sure that they understand, they have clarity, that we're on the same page. And this is where I really changed my perspective on leadership when I realized that it was actually something you embody and you embrace, and it's not just like a title. So yeah, that was huge for me, and I think that was the very, very start of kind of where I'm at now. It just like really helped.
Yeah, nice.
Mm.
Now, if people want to get in touch with you, what
Mm.
is the best way to do that? And I think you said that I'm going to put the links in below this podcast, but you said you've got like a free consultation or something like that for people as well.
Yeah, I have free 30-minute coaching consultations if you want to have a chat about kind of overcoming your own self-doubts and achieving more in your career, kind of moving into leadership, if that's something you're looking to do and get promoted and more pay rises, more recognition at work. We all want that. So you can contact me. My website is www.rachellounds, lounds.com.au. The links will be below. You can also find me on LinkedIn and on Instagram at Rachel Lounds. So yeah, that's the best way to get in touch. You can book in for a free 30-minute session with me.
Awesome. So I'm going to give you the last word in a second, but Rachel, today's been fantastic, fascinating to talk to you and get your insights. I look forward to being in your inner circle very soon. I'm going to let you have the final word. What would you like to say to everybody as we close out today?
I'd like to say to everybody, you know, don't fake it till you make it, brave it till you make it, have a brave mind. And when you are brave, you'll start to believe in yourself so that you can progress in your life and career without fear.
Excellent. Well done.
Thank you.